My name's Jen Reid and I'm part of the Pantayside staff tutor team. We have Virginie and Anne, and I'm the Angus version of it. So we're all in our separate authorities, but we work together and we collaborate. So this afternoon I'm not talking about resources. My plan in the next 10 minutes, very short 10 minutes, is to give you an idea of how we're trying to solve a kind of complicated, long-standing problem that's not unique to Angus. I think it's happening in a lot of authorities. I've been doing 1+2 stroke languages for quite a while now, and this problem is still reoccurring. So hopefully at the end of the 10 minutes you'll have a clearer idea of what we're trying to achieve in Angus, and we're kind of piloting it for the Pantayside team. And as I said before, every authority is different, so they'll take on elements of this model and maybe change it a little bit. And people who don't know me very well, I like to keep things simple. I'm from Yorkshire and everything is simple in Yorkshire, so if I can simplify anything, I think we've got a greater chance of making it work. So, I'm doing technology as well, it's very exciting. So Angus, as you know, I'm sure many of you know, is a large rural authority. We're split into 8 clusters. Each cluster has a secondary school and a mix of primary schools that feed into it. I see a lot of you nodding your heads. A lot of us are in that situation. We're in a large area, and that impacts on training and resources because we have Dundee University, but staff can't get to it. So we need to get central resource sites and central training, and that's affected this model and helped develop this. So we have 51 primaries. Some of them are tinsy-wincy, and you've got about 20 pupils in, and other ones are heading towards these sort of super mega schools where you've got hundreds and hundreds of primary school children and loads of staff. That again has an impact on this model, because if you've got lots and lots of staff, you can get one willing victim to be your language coordinator. If you've got 3 members of staff and they're already got PE, science, whatever hat you want to give them, and you mention languages, they kind of start twitching and they won't take anything else on. So we found that when we've asked for a contact with all our primary schools, that contact is quite often the head teacher. And in fact, for our 51 schools, I think we're up to about 23 of those schools, the language coordinator is the head teacher. So that has been something, again, that's influenced the development of this model, because if you've got head teachers that are just completely overwhelmed with 1,000,001 things they've got to do, and you say, oh, can you take on the 1+2 as well? That's again when the twitching starts, and you're kind of setting off on the bad note. You know, people don't want to take on an extra thing that's going to be a lot of work. So we had to think about what we actually needed to do, and part of this followed on from the Education Scotland survey that we all did last year, and there were 2 main things that came out of that. That and me, so actually picking staff brains and head teachers' brains, you know, what's actually going to work in the authority. We were finding that 2 of the biggest problems were communication. People needed to be able to speak to each other. They weren't sure who to contact within their cluster in terms of a cluster lead. They weren't sure who to contact in a secondary school in terms of getting support down for language learning. People could find out, but it would take them a long time to do it, so it wasn't happening. So that was a big problem. We had communication. And the other one was transition. And I'm sure after the results of your surveys as well, that transition, not only from sort of nursery upwards, but the big transition from primary 7 into BGE, it kind of needs a little bit more work on it, and we need to get secondary colleagues working together with primary colleagues. Because we found in the survey, although people were finding that languages coming up, the language skills were better, not necessarily a greater spread of vocabulary, but the children's attitude, this is in general, not everybody, but their attitude to language learning was a lot better. Mm-hmm. So secondary teachers were finding that, but then they were saying, but yeah, you've given me now some children from this school who are fantastic and a really strong level 2, and some over here who only just managed to say bonjour, and even then they're not sure what they're saying. So I've now got this huge discrepancy in my S1 class. What can we do? So we were finding, and speaking to other colleagues as well, going from primary 7 to S1, that's where we need to start doing the work, I think. And that's something that really came up from me chatting to them, and the survey is transition and communication. So that's something as a council we decided to focus on and try and sharpen up a little bit in Angus. So again, I like things really simple. We came up with this model, and I'm sure all of you are using elements of this anyway. And this is something that we're putting together. We suggested it in the summer, because I found with head teachers, a nice sort of softly approach to catchy monkey. You're more likely to get them on board. You know, if you sell them something that's well constructed, it's simple, it's not going to add to staff workload. So we suggested this in June, and we said that we were going to look towards this collegiate support model within Angus, because we all know that the funding might not last forever for us, so there might not be somebody central in the authority to coordinate what's happening with languages. So this is the sustainability that we're looking for. We're trying to build collegiate support within Angus now, in this year. Well, I know at the moment, touch wood, that I'm off to do my staff tutor role, unless I get called back in for supply work or anything. We're trying to get as much done as possible this year, and hoping that next year we might get some funding and I can carry on. But if not, this is what we're trying to get into place. So we're trying to get this really, really strong collegiate model that doesn't cost anything, but it's about people working together and supporting each other, looking at resources, transition, communication. Okay, so I made that little, it's good, isn't it? I did that all on my own. I'm really pleased with it.
Can we get our photo?
Yeah, you can. Do you want me to photobomb it? So we're looking, obviously we've got teaching staff. I didn't put parents in there because that isn't sort of part of this model, but obviously they're important for later down the line. Language coordinators, so that's going to be one person from each school. Then we're looking at the cluster lead language coordinators. I'm going to have to think of a more snappy title for that, but I haven't got there yet. Secondary staff, absolutely essential. They're the guys who actually know about languages. This is their speciality. We need to get them into primary schools, even if they're just talking to a primary teacher for half an hour. That's going to make a difference. You know, they're the specialists, and they're the people that we need. Staff tutor team, c'est moi, and there's another one. And obviously the managerial support that I'm getting above me. So we're all working together. It's not about one person saying this is what's happening in Angus. It's about one person maybe suggesting and getting support from here and there and there. So this is a real sort of model, a collegiate support model that we're working on to develop. Sustainable, that's the big word for it, and it's sustainable. Doesn't cost anything. So, very nicely, as before the summer, very, very nicely to the head teachers, please sir, can we have a language coordinator from your school? And it takes a while, because people kind of blink and say, but I'm already doing maths, PE, technology, I can't do that as well. So the answers started coming back in August, so I finally pinned down every single school, and I've got a point of contact, a language coordinator for every single school in Angus. Yes! I didn't think I'd actually do it, and some of them are more proactive than others. Others have kind of said, well, we're just starting on our journey because we've had a big change of staff. Can we come back to you? And I said, yes, you can come back, but I might not be here next year. And then they sort of, you know, it's starting to come in. So then we had to ask our primary staff. Now, you'll all know them. There's some keen beans out there who are fantastic, who are working really, really hard to develop languages. So I approached them first and said, would you like to be the lead language coordinator for your cluster? So they would be coordinating the primary schools within their cluster and also be the point of contact for the secondary schools. And what I'm planning to do is to give them sort of almost like a job spec so they can use it in their professional development, because really it's about encouraging leadership. And these, quite often they're people who are maybe heading towards a PT post, because it's quite a big thing to ask somebody to coordinate a cluster, because you're talking about implementation of L2, L3, looking at policies, getting staff motivated. So it's kind of like a mini staff tutor in each cluster, because again, we don't know what's happening next year. So we're getting these keen beans trained up and supported, and they're the lead coordinator for the cluster. Okay, and if anyone can think of a more catchy name than lead cluster language coordinator, then please let me know. But at the moment, that's where we are. And so then, this is when the real diplomatic skills come out. I spoke to the secondaries, and as a primary teacher, so it's a big school, they really know what they're talking about. Can you come and work with us? And I went along to a CAG, I've been to a few of them, and luckily I know them well, and they were all on board, which was just, I kept cool while I was in there, and I was sort of doing it, I've done it. And we've got them all signed up. Before you knew it, by the next day, they were all part of the Microsoft Language Teams site that I'll tell you about in a minute. So as soon as they signed up, poof, they were in. And that's it, we're all a happy family. So we've got the language coordinators, we've got the cluster coordinators, and we've got secondary input as well. And obviously the staff tutor team. So that's all of us working together to support each other with language development. So this is kind of where we are. Then in the summer, because I'm finding that people are a little bit overwhelmed with twilights, training, etc., etc., it's very difficult to get people to come along. So I've made a promise, an absolute blood promise. There will only be 4 meetings a year. They're on exactly the same time. So it's the first Tuesday of the month in the term. So not too close to coming back, but you're kind of getting warmed up into term, and there you are, you're on that one. It doesn't change. The time doesn't change. The location doesn't change, and the date doesn't change. So everybody knows at the beginning of the year, right, I've just got these 4 meetings, and that's it. Because I think if you sort of say, oh, maybe you can go to that one, and perhaps we have another one a little bit later on, and perhaps, we can do this twilight, then the enthusiasm starts to dip. So I've been quite firm on that one, and I've even said from 4 till 5 it's language coordinators, from 5 till 6 it's lead language coordinators. So you've got 2-hour block, and that's it. That's it done for the term. So that's the plan. We've had the first meeting, it went okay. There wasn't a great revolution or anything. So we're going on to the second meeting. I also decided that we would probably need to have an aim or something to look at for each meeting. So the first one was really what's happening in your school for language coordinators. Can you go away and do this survey and come back? And it was almost as simple as, do they actually know what PowerLanguage is? Because that's the resource we've brought into in Pante side. Can you log on? And that was another question, because a lot of people were saying, I could log on, but I kind of lost my password, and then it went away, and then they left, and now what is PowerLanguage again? So we're kind of doing a baseline thing, so everybody has got the log on, they know what the resource is, they know how to work it. I'm going to train the probationers up in it as well, so I'm hoping that everybody will have that. Okay, that's the plan. The second meeting, that was, so they sound complicated, but it's not really. First meeting, we talk about doing this baseline framework assessment. They go away with that, and then they come back for the second meeting. The first part of that second meeting is going to be about speaking and listening, looking at the skills you need to do that. So I'm going to do half an hour on pedagogy, half an hour on activities, and then the meeting with the big guns, the lead language coordinators and the secondary teachers, we're going to talk about the results of the survey, because they don't need to know the pedagogy of language learning, they've already done that. So that's what our meeting's going to be about, and it's going to start planning next steps of how they're going to put that into their practice within their cluster, because that will be the first time some of the lead language coordinators have met the secondary reps from their school, language reps. So I'm going to ply them with cake and coffee and crisps and whatever it takes, and they're not getting out the room, so they've all talked to each other and got some kind of policy to go on next. And I was thinking if the cluster leads have got something to say, well look, in this school I've got some probationers who are not sure about pronunciation, then maybe the secondary teacher can come in and offer some training. But you're not going to get that unless people are in the same room. So that's my cunning plan. Fill them with cake and crisps and whatever I have to do, and get them around a table talking. And then we're going to move on from there. So that's it, a very, very simple model, a representative from each school, each cluster, and each secondary school, all together in the same room. So we're going to see how that works. and I'll keep you posted. I think it'll be okay. Oh yeah, and the other, term 3, we're looking at writing, and term 4 is, it's gone, it's completely gone. Speaking, listening. Reading, that's the one. Reading and then writing in the last term. So we're covering all the skills, and the idea is the language coordinators can cascade all of that back. Part of the cunning plan, and I'll let you know if it works. So that's talking about the communication. Another thing we're doing about communication and resources is to do this Microsoft Teams. I don't know if anybody else uses it. Yeah. Apparently the whole world has been using it for years, but it's new to me and I'm really excited about it. So, I've just made these groups up. We've got the cluster leads in a group, we've got the language coordinators in a group, and they can chat away to each other. And if you want to send any message to them, it pops up in their inbox. Because we did have a slight problem with Glow in Angus, is the way it's been set up. There was 4 jumps to get to the resource site, and that was enough to put people off. So we're making these central sites, and as you can see on the top of one of them, it's got the document library. So anything relevant is going in folders in there. So when people say, I'm not too sure about the L3 update, where is it? I think, well, actually, I've just put it in the resource library on the Microsoft Teams site that I set up and sent it to people. So if you go and have a look, that's where it is. So the idea is it's a one-stop shop for Angus, for resources and everything else. And obviously, colleagues from Perth and Dundee will be able to access this as well, because that's how we rock, we share stuff. So that's the communication, that's what we do. Hopefully it's working. Will you, Michelle? 2 minutes. Oh my God, it's been rattling away. Right, so I'll play you this very quickly if I can get it to work. This is what we're trying to do. By getting everybody together in a room, we are aiming for this. We're trying to get everybody to be working collegiately. It's not about expecting one person in the middle to do all the work. It's about everybody supporting everyone else, because we don't know how long the funds are going to last, and how we're going to have to do it ourselves pretty soon. So this is kind of what we're aiming for at Angus. I'm not going to give you a demonstration. You might be very disappointed, but I'll just pay you about 30 seconds of this.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not 2 nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers, because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer...
That's kind of what we're trying to do in Angus, but not with those sort of moves. I don't move like that, and I probably haven't ever taken the sort of stuff he's taken to make him dance like that. So. But I think you get my point, is we're trying to get everybody working together. So it's not about a central lead, although you do need elements of that. It's about the collegiate support. So that's really, really what we're aiming for. Please don't go back to Education Scotland and tell them that's what we do in Angus. I'm making notes. I've been writing the whole time. So this is kind of a pilot. We've had elements of doing this before, but what we're going to do is we're going to analyse this as we go, just sort of softly in terms of chatting to people to see how it's working, and then we're going to be doing a more formal evaluation in the summer. So to help us do that, we've given the language coordinators their first job, and this is the framework baseline assessment. They've had something like this, I think, about 2 years ago, so we're sending it out again, and I'll happily give you the whole thing. That's just a couple of pages that we're just wanted to show you. So this is going out with language coordinators, and it's going to be coming back after the October holidays, and that gives us a really good idea of where the schools are and where they need to work and the next steps. And we're sort of working together collegiately within Pantayside, and I think Pantayside, your Dundee and Perth and Kinross are giving out a slightly different form now. And what I've done is tag some of the questions that we're giving out in the main one that's going out. We're doing it now. So these are questions about PowerLanguage. Again, it's simple things like, do you know what it is? Can you sign on? Do you know where the responsive resources are? Do you know what they are? It's those kind of questions. So do people know where PowerLanguage is, and are they using it effectively? So that's what we're trying to find out. I think Virginie's going to talk to you a little bit more about the more general one we're doing. So, in summary, this is what we're trying to do, just keep it simples. Because if it's simples, you've got a fighting chance that it's going to work. I'm trying not to get too many people in the teams, other people are asking to join, but I just want to keep everything nice and simple, and we're going to evaluate it at the end. That's what we're working on. Hopefully, we're going to be successful. So, if there's any questions, there's no time now because I'm down to...
No, you did it. Thank you very much.